An unusual meeting we are having today. 5 speeches in a row will be on display, performed by one master. His name is Pat Caslin. Come on, join us, faster! We are ready to begin. To all of you who joined the meeting, we extend our warmest greeting. Don't forget to mute your phone. Cameras on. Smiles set the tone. Guests and members, here is a warning. We are making a recording. If you don't want your face to show, it's no problem. Just let us know. Whether you are guest or member, we will ask you to remember. Your unnecessary actions can be looked at as distractions. Let them stay behind the scene. For a moment, turn off the screen. But as soon as you are done, turn the camera back on. Let us see your smiling faces. Time to start. Everybody in places? Our president, Sandra, wise, patient, eloquent, and more, is getting ready to take the floor.
Thank you, Tamara. I love those. I say that every time because I do. We have a very special meeting today, and I'm going to keep my announcements to a minimum. And let's introduce our first-time guest, who I found out something very interesting about when we were chatting earlier, and that is, well, Jürgen, why don't you share what we have almost in common?
Well, we have a lot of things in common, I would suspect, being Toastmasters to begin with. Okay. But it is, when I was chatting with Sandra a little bit earlier on our backgrounds, the project management aspect and the industries that we have been in, which is publications. And I have actually expanded my business back in the day from Canada into Europe, given that I am by birth German, so I'm fluent, bilingual. And with that, I've had a great opportunity through Toastmasters giving me the confidence to strike out on my own. And with that, I have made connections in the aircraft industry, Airbus in particular, and subsidiaries to them, as well as the publication industry. From there, I started to, sniff around a little bit. What else can I do over there while I'm there? And with that, I also have made very good contacts with Bombardier in Bombardier Aerospace, Bombardier Recreational Products. And I won't go into all the details, but I was actually asked, can you come here? So, well, of course I can come here. My airplanes fly over there still. So I ended up in Austria with Bombardier Recreational Products, creating manuals for a new engine that they have created or designed, and it was going into serious production. So, yeah, it was something that I was interested in because I grew up, I'm a military brat. I grew up inhaling kerosene, basically. So that's my background in a nutshell, and it has never left me, but it has taken me into places that I thought I never would be. So, and here I am, just they say curiosity kills the cat, but Kotick is my nickname that my wife gave me, Tomcat. And I think I've had more than 9 lives by now, and I'm still sniffing around.
And how many of those 9 lives have you spent in Toastmasters? When did you join?
I looked it up in 1987. So that's 38 years ago.
So he's got a year on me, which is the third time someone who's been in Toastmasters. as long. But our speaker today is a phenomenal Toastmaster and TEDx speaker. But before we get to Pat, Jon, it's your show. Take it over.
Well, thank you very much. Welcome, Masters of Evaluation and our guests. Welcome to the Glib and Oily Workshop. That's right, I said glib and oily. We promise to provide you a toolkit for impactful, persuasive, and memorable speeches. We're dispensing with functionary introductions and all that. We're getting right to speeches and evaluations. For those of you that don't know, glib is readily fluent, often thoughtlessly, superficially, or insincerely slow. So a glib talker or a glib answer. Synonyms are smooth, facile, loquacious, talkative. Oily? Of a person or their behavior, unpleasantly smooth and ingratiating. Ladies and gentlemen of MoE, have you ever been to like a church, it's a pastor giving a message, a speech, there's 300 congregants, but you know the message is just tailored for you? Have you ever been that way? I feel that's how I am at this meeting and Pat's thing. I don't know that I've ever been called glib and oily by those words, but I definitely have been called it by some other words. I'm not here to talk to you about my childhood and why I default into my glib and oily ways, or defend or argue that glib and oily has value at times. I just do know that there was times that my words didn't carry the weight or sincerity that I wanted to. I'm thinking of my ex-wife and so many times telling her exactly what needed to be told, but she didn't buy it. And I'd scream to the sky, "What? I said the right words." She said, "I didn't like how you said it." So effective communication requires honesty, right? It requires authenticity, transparency, and trust from the audience that you mean what you say and that you can be trusted and that you're not being manipulative. Maybe that's what my wife was saying of me. Today, we have the pleasure of learning at the hands of one of the masters of MoE, Pat Caslin. We know him as a top-notch speaker, a man who speaks from his heart, and a man who's given great thought, effort, and reflection on the art of communication. Please unmute and welcome distinguished Toastmaster Pat Caslin. Pat.
Woohoo!
Thank you very much. He's going to be giving 5 speeches. He's benefiting us by the words and the advice he's giving, and he's benefiting the club. Basically, he's a Toastmaster saint. So the first speech, we're getting right to it. Pat's going to do all the introductions and explanation. The first one is an icebreaker, and it's appropriately entitled, "Hi, I'm Pat Caslin." Pat?
Hello, I'm Pat Caslin. I'm a father, I'm a speaker, I'm a son, and I've come to believe that at the pivotal moments in our lives, the words we use matter. They matter to me, they matter to my siblings, and they matter to those who heard the words I used to describe my late mother's in her eulogy. And they mattered to the people who didn't know her, who listened to those words, and who turned up out of respect for us rather than a knowledge of her. Because they found out who she was, how she influenced, and what she meant to us. Those words mattered. And in about 5 weeks, in my father role, I'll speak at my son's wedding. It'll be to a small group of family and close friends, but again, this is a pivotal moment in Harry's life. It's a pivotal moment in his wife's life, Jane. It's a pivotal moment in my family's life and in her family's life. And the words that I use will matter, and matter greatly to what they take away from that day. Now, you probably think I've come here to practice my wedding speech. You know, I might inflict that on you at some point in time, but not today. But in some ways, I have come to practice. I've come to practice and to better understand by teaching as a way of learning, to understand for myself how I can build a speech that will say the things that I want Harry to hear, that I want Jane to hear, that I want the room to hear, so that when I finish, they'll know, not just because they heard, not just because they saw, but because in their hearts they felt surrounded by warmth, by love, by friendship, and by support. And that'll be no small challenge, by the way, because young Harry, well, 31, is a pretty smooth speaker himself, because he's been MC at a couple of weddings, he's been MC at his college events, he's been MC at work stuff that he's done as well. So wish me luck in that. So what's today about? Today about me saying to you, this is my understanding of the rhetorical devices that I've come across that I've found useful. And a few of them I've used in the previous words that I've said. I'm going to make 4 speeches, and they will describe some of the main rhetorical devices. But before that, let me explain where the title glib and oily comes from. For those of you who are Shakespeare scholars or have studied King Lear, particularly that great play, Lear's daughter Cordelia, in speaking about her sister's sycophancy towards her father, described them as speaking in that glib, with that glib and oily art to speak and purpose not. Rhetoric. So that's how William Shakespeare described rhetoric, that glib and oily art to speak and purpose not. That's where the title comes from. So this is a series of speeches on different aspects of rhetoric. And the aspects that I'm going to talk about are first, ethos, pathos, and logos, and I'll explain all these terms. The second one is on antitheses. The third one is on tricolon, anaphora, and epistrophe. And the fourth one is on metaphor, simile, and analogy. I'm going to try and break those down and give you examples of speeches in which they generated powerful emotions, powerful memories, and powerful sense of what is important. And if we do that, and we do that well, we can create more powerful speeches, more impactful memories, and more significant change in the way we talk to people than if we just write out words without thinking of how do we put these together in a way that really influences. So today, I'm going to try and tell you how to influence better or for worse, because you can use them for good and for bad. And I'll give you some of those examples. So, whenever you're ready, I'm ready to go with the first one. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you for that, Pat. We usually provide 60 seconds in between speeches, but we're doing time management. I don't know that we need comments on the opening speech. Why don't we launch into your second speech?
Well, you know what? If people have comments on that, I'd love to hear them. So,
all right, we'll move a lot. 60 seconds.
Yeah, no, let's take a minute or a minute and a half, John, if you don't mind.
I would love
and just
that.
put some comments on the chat. Yeah.
Sure.
That's
private chat or publicly, so that we all see it. How would you like it, Pat?
Yeah, chat. Yeah, absolutely. Great. And be brutal. I'm pretty thick-skinned.
That's been 1 minute, Mr. Toastmaster.
Great. Thank you very much. Pat, is there any value in me identifying which speech you're working on? Because I know your objectives are more important. Do I just say you're giving your second speech and leave it at that?
Yeah, sure. I'll do the intro. So they're all entitled Glib and Oily number 1, 2, 3, and 4. So there you go.
Glib and Oily number 2.
Number 1. Icebreaker.
Number 1.
All right, Glib and Oily number 1. I'm going to share my screen with you because I've got some slides for these. So let me see, share screen 2. All right, can you tell me when you can see that? Go share. Here we go. See that?
We can see it, yes.
Super. I'm borrowing perhaps one of the greatest speakers of the last century, and I'll be leaning on some of his work to explain what I'm doing here. So this is about ethos, pathos, and logos. So you may have heard those terms. They're Greek terms, and they've been around for thousands of years, and they're the fundamentals and building blocks of speaking. One of the fundamental building blocks of speaking. So ethos is relatability. Because if you can't relate to your audience, if you don't dress yourself in the clothes that your audience want to see you in, not just the physical clothes, but the verbal clothes that make you relatable, well, then you're going to have great difficulty persuading them. You need to be one of the tribe, and you need to try in the way you introduce yourself, in the way in which you present yourself, and in the way in which you understand what an audience actually wants to hear, how you are one of them. So ethos is about becoming recognizable to your audience, being one of them. What hope have you got of persuading somebody that doesn't see your point of view, that doesn't believe that you're one of them, that doesn't share your outlook? You're already in difficulty. You're climbing a mountain. So an ethos, it's all around us. It's in all the brand identity that we have. It's in the way we relate to each other. It's in the way that we speak to each other. It's in the way that we address each other. It's in the way that corporates talk to us, because they want to relate to us. They want to get their messages across to us into our hearts so that we buy into the products that they're selling. But it can be used negatively as well, because if I say you're not one of us and I put you aside into a different box, the Latin term is ad hominem, so you are somebody else, it can be used negatively as well. It's used in politics, well, particularly in American politics, but in global politics, it is speaking about others as not being somebody that we want to relate to or that we want to know. So look at this. This is Martin Luther King's opening sentence in his I Have a Dream speech. And think about this, 5 score years ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand today signed the Emancipation Proclamation. So they're standing under the Liberty Monument, and he is talking to the entire nation. A great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This is speaking to everybody. It's not just to his own constituency, because everybody understands the significance of where he's standing and the significance of what he's talking about. And later he continues, when the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, and again he's drawing on the unassailable belief that the words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence are words that are important. So he has immediately created the sense that I have right on my side. I have right to talk because I'm drawing on these phenomenally powerful and inalienable things that are meaningful to everybody. That's creating his ethos. Can you relate to that? Absolutely. From Julius Caesar, friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. Now, has the speaker ingratiated himself by calling his audience friends? And in Rome, Civus Romanus, sum is in Latin, was I am a citizen of Rome. There was no prouder thing you could say as a Roman. Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. He has brought the audience with him without saying more than 6, 7 words. So there are a lot of ways you can establish your ethos at the start of the speech. I don't know if you remember the speech by Muhammad Khatani when he goes on stage, Toastmasters final, and he pretends to light up a cigarette and looks at the audience and said, "What?" As if to say, "So what's your problem with it?" There was a shock or a surprise on that. It was fabulous, actually. And immediately the audience was with him. You can tell a story, and stories bring people with you as well. You can say some intrigue. Let me tell you about the time that I got really in real difficulty. And now people are saying, "I want to hear this." Or you can use a prop, as some speakers did in one of the speakers went on stage with a flower. Or using something that demonstrates or that gets people intrigued as to what's happening. Or you can use humor. A lot of people tell a joke to start a speech so that they bring the audience into it. Or something inspirational as a quote, or just silence. What's he going to say next? When's he going to start? Because when you're silent, people wait to hear you. Silence is very powerful as a way of starting a speech, or giving a big promise, but that's difficult because you've got to deliver on a big promise. So these are some ways of establishing ethos at the start of your speech. Now, what's pathos? Pathos is emotion. It's a Greek word. And what pathos does is, this is one of the most powerful rhetorical devices, because if you can get your audience to feel whatever it is you want them to feel, whether it's to feel good or to feel bad or to feel shock or to feel revulsion or to feel elation or to feel disappointment, if you can arouse their feelings, you definitely bring them with you in a really powerful way. But don't overuse it, because if you use it all the time, people become inured to it. They don't believe it, and it just becomes a theater. It also helps to establish your ethos. So let's have a look at this. So Martin Luther King says, "I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character." Now, if he had said, "I have a dream that people will one day live in a nation," and he said the same thing, it becomes a completely different sentiment, because he has brought his 4 little children into it, and he has created an emotion, because everybody can relate to the fact of little children being able to be judged by the content of their character. So creating that pathos, that emotion, by just those 4 words, "my 4 little children," really powerful. And then logos is logic. So if you're not relatable and you can't create humor or bring people into your speech, the logic becomes much, much more difficult to get across. If you've brought people in with you, and if you've aroused their emotion and you've made them happy or sad, and you've brought them with you, when you begin to explain your point and the logic becomes much, much easier. So logic, what's logic? It's a series of statements, when you put them together or combine them, that show something to be true. And what you want is to persuade people to your truth. Logic doesn't just stand on its own. Logic also depends on evidence. So if you can say, the nation is in bad shape, well, you're trying to be logical. But if you can say the nation is in bad shape because the deficit has run up to such and such because, well, then you're adding evidence, which makes your argument much stronger. So if you're going to use logic, back it up by evidence. Now, your evidence can be totally false or completely misleading, as it often is with politicians, but evidence does persuade, because people don't stop and investigate the evidence. Remember the quote from Adolf Hitler: "The broad mass of a nation will more easily fall for a big lie than a small one." And there were lots of lies. So in Brexit, for example, one of the, when Britain exited from the EU, one of the things that was said was that we spend 350 million a week to the EU. Why don't we spend it on the National Health Service? Well, it was true. They did spend 350 million pounds a week, but they were getting an awful lot more than that. So this is evidence that was used, but used selectively to make a point. And people were persuaded by that point, but without giving the counterbalance. So if you want to detect the BS in this, look out for syllogisms which operate like this. So if I say all A is B, and I'll give you an example of this in a moment, the major premise that all A, everything that's A is B. And the minor premise is that X is A. Well, you're trying to get people to conclude that, your conclusion often is that X is B. Now, why is this? So let me give an example, a silly example. Logically, some of B might be A, but not all of B. But if you're saying them, and all men die, my pet flamingo died, so all men die is all X is A, all men die, and my pet flamingo died. Well, some people were trying to say my pet flamingo is a man. That is the logic detection. So look out for syllogisms and false logic, because you'll find a huge amount of that in politics. Another one is enthymeme, which is a syllogism with an applied conclusion. This is slightly easier. So if I say the major premise, all parking wardens are parasites on the people. And then I say the minor premise, Julia is a parking warden. The implied conclusion is Julia is a parasite on the people. So again, it's false logic. She not necessarily, but that is an enthymeme. The conclusion is implied. So in summary, ethos, relatability, pathos, emotion, logos, logic. If you are relatable and you can create emotion, you can more generally persuade with your logic. But be careful of people who use logic, because it's not always true logic. There's plenty of syllogisms and enthymemes in there that will try and persuade you to think or do differently than is the right thing to do. And that is using that glib and oily art to speak and purpose not. Definitely glib and very oily, Mr. Toastmaster.
Oily and glib number one. We have 1 minute for feedback, and Pat has said put it in the main chat, please.
Thank you.
That is 1 minute, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you so much. I am writing my comments, and I am the Toastmaster, but I can multitask. Ladies and gentlemen, we move on to glib and oily number two. Glib and oily number two. Pat Castlin.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. So this speech is about antitheses, which is the, hold on, let me just see, is this loading properly? Oh, here we go. Yeah, so antithesis is about the way, using language in a way that it operates on us. So think about this. When I say certain words, they trigger other words in your mind. So what word comes to your mind when I say ticket, popcorn, Coke? First word comes to your mind.
Movies.
Movie. There you go. All right. But if I use words that you don't expect, well, then that has three ways that it affects you. First of all, it surprises you. Two, it makes you think a little bit about what I've said. And three, it's more memorable. So the words, the way I construct phrases can be much, much more memorable. So let me look at a number of them, and you recognize all of this. So the opening line of A Tale of Two Cities, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. Mark Antony's oration at Caesar's funeral. I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him. Alexander Pope's exhortation that to err is human, to forgive divine. Or that great line spoken by Neil Armstrong when he stepped on the moon, that's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Now, why are these phrases powerful? So let's look at them. They're balanced on either side of a center. So you have 6 words on one side, 6 words on the other side. You've got 3 words to bury Caesar, and 3 on one side, not to praise him on the other side, to praise him on the other side. You've got 5 syllables. Er is human, forgive divine, to forgive divine. Balanced in terms of their syllables. And in this one, you've got a same balance, one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind. Well, actually, he didn't say a man. He should have, but he didn't. Anyway, first of all, these phrases are in balance. Yeah? There you go. There's the balance. Now, what else about them? They have an opposite on either side. Best, worst. Bury, praise. Err, forgive, human, divine. There's 3 opposites in the last one. Small, giant, step, leap, man, mankind. So they're balanced and they've got opposites. But there's more to them than that. There's the concept of primacy and recency. So primacy sets you up to expect something, and recency delivers you something else. And it's the recency that you remember. And because you weren't expecting the change or the opposite, the recency becomes quite powerful. So it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. Mark Antony was told, you may not praise Caesar in your speech. But he constructed the sentence, or Shakespeare constructed the sentence for him in a way that he said, I've come to praise Caesar, not to praise him. But what are we left with? We left with praise. That's what we remember. Alexander Pope exhorted us to, we accept that you are, but he exhorted us to the greater height of forgiveness in the way he used recency. We allow error, but forgiving is divine. And again, the opposite, or the recency, was the giant leap for mankind that Neil Armstrong talked about when he stepped on the moon. So we have primacy, sets you up what to expect, and recency delivers what we want you to remember. So here's my rules for constructing antitheses. Speakers can influence what listeners expect because the words that we use prompt related ideas. And number 2, we forget what's expected, but surprise always sticks. Rule number 3 is keep the number of syllables the same on each side. Rule number 4 is a symmetry of opposites is easier to grasp. So if you keep the opposites in symmetry, you'll grasp it much better. Use primacy to prompt, use recency for impact. Now that's what we call antitheses. Is that the same one? Oh yeah. And if you want to construct an antithesis, start with the opposites. It's very difficult to construct a good antithesis if you start somewhere by constructing the phrase. Start with the opposites, the words that you want to use. So here's my rules. Yeah. So we go through those. Speakers can influence what listeners expect because the words we use prompt related ideas. What's expected is forgotten. What surprises is not. Keep the number of syllables the same on each side. a symmetry of opposites that's easier to grasp, use primacy to prompt, use recency for impact, and construct your antithesis by starting with opposites. Think of them balancing on a seesaw. So there's the rules for antitheses. So think about how you can construct phrases that use this concept of antitheses, opposites, primacy, recency, to build phrases that are more memorable, because the words that you're using are not the words that others expect. There you go. That is my Mr. Toastmaster on glib and oily number 2, antitheses.
Thank you very much. I know the crowd's going to ask, Pat, are you providing handouts afterwards? Any of this material that
I will send all the slides into if they I can upload them to the chat afterwards if everybody wants to wait, or if somebody wants to send me an email, please do on onepatcaslin@gmail.com. I'll put that in the chat, and I will send anybody the slides.
Great. And we have 1 minute to provide feedback to Mr. Caslin. Meanwhile, I know our President Sandra Savage would like to acknowledge a few guests that just joined us.
Scott, if you wouldn't mind, stop sharing for just a moment so that we can all see who has joined us since we began. And I believe we have a couple guests today. I'd like to call on, and we have a short amount of time. We can talk more later. But tell us your name, where you're from, and how long you've been in Toastmasters. Let's start with Adnan.
Everyone.
Yes.
My name is Toastmaster Adnan Khaskini. I am audible.
Just let us know where you are.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yes.
Okay. My name is Adnan Khaskili, and I am recently I am involved in Toastmaster recently. I am from Pakistan. I joined this meeting Toastmaster Sandra Savage's Facebook post. So I am happy to see you all in next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. And then we'd also like to acknowledge and greet Neham. Neham
Neve is a member of my wonderful member at DTM in my Toastmasters Club in Dublin. So
wonderful.
Neve Gourlay, yes. Hello, Neve. Good to see you. Well, good to see you here. Thank you for coming along.
And we'll find time at the end to get to know you a little better. Let's go ahead, John, and return to our regularly scheduled program.
Great. We are back. The theme is oil and glib and oily, and we are now on to glib and oily part 3. Pat Caslin.
Thank you very much. I just Patrick, I sent my email address just to Patrick. Patrick, would you circulate it while I talk, if you don't mind, please? I'd very much appreciate that. Glib and oily number 3. Let me get this one going here. All right, and so number 3 is, well, when we talk and we repeat ourselves, we often get criticized, and we're told, please, you're repeating yourself. Well, you know something? I think that repetition can be a really powerful tool if used the right way. So in this speech, I'm going to talk to you about forms of repetition that are powerful and why they're powerful. And they're tricolon, anaphora, and epistrophe. So there, some of you might know tricolon as triads. So let's just kick this off. So you don't want to be seen as being repetitive. You don't want to be saying the same thing over and over again. But sometimes if you repeat things in a certain way, they become very, very powerful and very, very persuasive. So use repetition to drive home a point, to make words catchy or memorable, to express a really deeply held belief, or to convey a strong emotion, or to help set the scene by imitating a certain sound and rhythm. And sometimes repetition goes with sounds and rhythms. If you listen to Martin Luther King, for example, the rhythm of the speech is as much a part of the words he uses, the way he uses those words. It's really worth listening to if you haven't listened to it in a while. So what's tricolon? It's the power of three. And three is, here's some examples: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. There's a three for you. Blood, sweat, and tears, another triad or tricolon. Reduce, reuse, recycle. I don't know if you do that in the US, but we do have it over in Europe. I saw, I conquered Julius Caesar. Veni, vidi, vici in Latin. Our brain loves threes. Why? Well, threes are very cognitively easy for us to recognize and digest. There's not too little, there's not too much. If you can put rhythm and balance on them, it makes the ideas much, much more memorable. So similar words or similar phrases or similar length, and alliterate them even better. Reduce, reuse, recycle. And if you can, threes give a completeness to an idea. It's not too much, but it seems like you've captured a lot of the idea in a triad or a tricolon, as distinct from just leaving something out there on its own to make its own way. So threes add support to each other. So what's a tricolon? It's a three. It has a parallel in that there's something similar going on in between all of the points that are made, and it can consist of words or clauses or phrases. So let's have a look at them, right? Winston Churchill, in exhorting the people to be brave, never give up, never give up, never, never, never. It's defiant. It's an exhortation. It's emotional. It says we are not going to be beaten. Or Abraham Lincoln, government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Again, phenomenally powerful in its repetition of the people, the people, the people. It's not we're going to have good government. It's going to be government of the people, for the people, and by the people. You are going to be involved. And back to the introduction to Friends, Romans, Countrymen, lend me your ears. Again, another triad, but a triad that also has a very strong element of ethos in it. And again, back to Winston Churchill, we shall fight on the beaches, we shall fight on the landing grounds, we shall fight in the fields and in the streets, we shall fight on the hills, we shall never surrender. It's more than three, but it's another very powerful repetition. We are not going to stop fighting. I gave an evaluation to a man in our Toastmasters club that Niamh knows, that had spoken about his honeymoon on a hotel in Rome, I think in the 1950s or 1960s, an older man. And I thought that he had captured the sense of that time beautifully. And my evaluation was that it was of its time, it was about its time, and we were with you in that time. Because I wanted him to feel that we understood as an audience about what he spoke about and brought us through the experience that he had. And I thought that was a nice use of a tricolon to give an appropriate evaluation to somebody that spoke from their heart. Be careful though, because you can express complex ideas simply in a triad, and sometimes they're designed to introduce belief where belief is not warranted. So be careful of triads when you listen to them. So like hot, fresh, and fast, yeah, great, but is it good for you? Because you're worth it. So give us an awful lot of your money, or just do it. Well, yeah, just do it and part with a couple of $100 for a pair of sneakers. Or when, again, back to Brexit, when the pro-Brexiteers we're exhorting the people to take back control. The sense is that you have lost it. But 3 simple words to express the fact that I want to persuade you to vote against this. Or an exhortation to go to war. George Bush's statement calling them the axis of evil. Again, 3 very simple words, but that create a very strong message that we need to deal with this. So what's anaphora then? So tricolon is repeating 3s. Anaphora is repeating the same idea, phrase, or word at the beginning of a sentence. So this one here, Martin Luther King, go back to Mississippi, go back to Alabama, go back to South Carolina, go back to Georgia, go back to Louisiana, go back to the slums and the ghettos. It is the repeated word at the beginning of a sentence, which again is very powerful if you place the words in the same place in the sentence. Yeah. Or this one from Eric Wiesel, which is indifference elicits no response. Indifference is not a response. Indifference is not a beginning. It is an end. And again, a very powerful exhortation to do not be indifferent to great wrong, because of the way he used that triad, and he used it by using anaphora, placing his triad at the beginning of the sentence. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. Or again, back to Churchill, victory at all costs, victory in spite of terror, victory however long and however and hard the road may be. We will overcome. Believe me, we'll overcome. Alexander the Great, exhorting his soldiers to continue to support him. For I have been wounded with the sword in close fight. I have been shot with arrows. I have been struck with missiles. I have been hit with the stones and bolts of wood for the sake of your lives, your glory, and your wealth. So there are a number of triads in there, or tricolons in there, but there's also anaphora in the way he uses I have been at the beginning of a sentence. Again, powerful and persuasive. Now, epistrophe. So epistrophe is repeating the same idea, phrase, or word at the end of a sentence. So here are some epistrophes. Again, government of the people, by the people, for the people is the use of epistrophe, the repetition coming at the end of the sentence. Or you can fool some of the people all of the time, all of the people some of the time, but you cannot fool all of the people all of the time. Again, it is at the end of the sentence. And then from the Bible, from Corinthians, when I was a child, I spoke as a child, I understood as a child, I thought as a child. As a child, at the end of each sentence, is the use of epistrophe. Another one, Lyndon Johnson in 1965, we're in the 60s this, for much of this talk. There is no Negro problem, there is no Southern problem, there's no Northern problem, there's only an American problem. He was bringing, by the use of epistrophe, people to believe that this is not a problem just about Negroes and the South. This is a problem for all Americans. So again, a powerful use of tricolon and epistrophe to make his point. So there's a way to construct your sentences so that you can use tricolon, the power of repeating things 3 times at the beginning and at the end of sentences to create really strong impressions that persuade people. Tricolon, anaphora, epistrophe. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you very much, Pat. That ends Glib and Oily number 3. We have a minute for your comments in the chat. You can put it in the main chat. That is fine.
Mr. Toastmaster, 1 minute has elapsed.
Great. Thank you very much. Just how much glib and oily can we get? There's more. We've heard from the people. You want more glib and oily. Number 4. Savor it. This is the last of the installments. Mr. Caslin.
Thank you very much. Let me just get my screen share on and I shall get going on glib and oily number 4. So this one is about metaphor, analogy, and simile. So first of all, let me explain what they are. So a metaphor says that a metaphor says something is, a metaphor is something. A simile says it's like something. An analogy explains how one thing being like another. All right. So, for example, a metaphor is Joe is a pig. A simile is Joe is as dirty as a pig. It's a comparison between Joe and the pig. And an analogy, it says Joe's personal hygiene is the same as the pig's, the way they both roll in the dirt all day. So that's explaining how one thing is like another. And metaphor and analogy particularly are very powerful in speaking. So let's have a look at some metaphors and analogy. Metaphors, they make the intangible tangible, they make the unfamiliar familiar, and they make the complex simple by joining seemingly unconnected things and embedding powerful images in our mind because they relate things that we don't understand to things that we do. And they create powerful connections between the speaker and the listener. So let's have a look at some of them. Carl Sagan, in describing the cosmic calendar, so the cosmic calendar is, I don't know, trillions of years long. He used the analogy of a year to explain the timeline of the cosmic calendar from the beginning of time. So he said January the 1st was the Big Bang, the beginning of the universe. December the 31st at midnight was now. And a month represents 1.15 billion years. And a second in our time represented roughly 500 years. So here's how he made that very real to us. So the early universe happened in the first few months of the year, and then we had the solar system. Our solar system formed around mid-September. So think about that. And humans tamed fire at about 11:45 on December the 31st. After the first humans appeared around 10:30 on December the 31st. And all of recorded human history takes place in the last few seconds of the last minute of December. So think about that in terms of, he gave us an analogy or a model or a way of explaining the length of the cosmic calendar by creating the analogy with the year. So we can understand how recent we are when we know that all of human history that's recorded takes place in the last few seconds of the last minute of December. Fabulous analogy. Now, Martin Luther King, we're back in the 1960s. He talked about 100 years later, the Negro is still not free, crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of description. And in this, he was using a number of different of those devices that we use. So let's look at which devices he used here, right? Actually, which one is it? Oh yeah. So let's look at this. So he used anaphora, but 100 years later, 100 years later, 100 years later, 100 years later. So he's using a tricolon and anaphora and repeating the same thing for powerful impact. He used epistrophe. The Negro is still not free, is still sadly crippled, is still languished in the corners of American society. So he brought both anaphora and epistrophe and tricolon. He used metaphor, the manacles of segregation, the chains of discrimination. He talked that they lived on a lonely island of poverty in a vast ocean of material prosperity. These are metaphors that we can understand, but he's saying they are crippled by the manacles of segregation. It's not a simile. It's like having a manacle of segregation on you. They are crippled by them. They do live on a lonely island of poverty in a vast ocean of material prosperity. So again, very powerful metaphors to explain the situation of the Negro in the 1960s. And he used antithesis, lonely island of poverty, lonely compared with in the midst of, island in a vast ocean, and poverty compared with material prosperity. So all of those devices are used to create real power in what Martin Luther King was saying. And then the fabulous metaphor that he used at the end was the metaphor of the bank. We've come to our nation's capital to cash a check. And the check was written as a promissory note, which every American was entitled to. And the promise was that they would be guaranteed the inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And he went on, and he went on to say that America has defaulted on that promissory note, which is a fabulous metaphor, because we citizens, Negro citizens, cannot cash that bad. The check has gone bad. There's insufficient funds. And he talked about the bank of justice is bankrupt. What a wonderful metaphor for the situation that people found themselves, that Black people found themselves in the 1960s. And let's look at another piece of real persuasion. This is the Prime Minister of Australia apologising to the native Australian people, the Aborigines, for what has been done to them. And this was a motion that he put in front of the Australian Commons. I move today that we honour the Indigenous people of this land, the oldest continuing cultures in human history. So first of all, he's created a sense of ethos. I recognise who you are. I recognise your claim to your Indigenous heritage because you are the oldest continuing culture in human history. And then he used anaphora. We reflect on their past mistreatment. He used tricolon in some ways. And he says we reflect on the particular mistreatment of the stolen generations. And he then repeated that phrase later in this as we come along. And then he talked about righting the wrongs of the past and moving forward with confidence to the future. That is itself an antithesis, righting the wrongs, the past, the future, history, and moving forward. So there's loads of antithetical phrases in there. And then he got into the really powerful stuff, because he talked about the profound grief, the suffering, and the loss of these, our fellow Australians. So there's ethos in that, but there's also a recognition in the use of the tricolon, profound grief, suffering, and loss. He could have said, we know that you've been wronged. But he used these phrases instead, so much more powerful. And then he apologized to their families, their communities, and their country. He didn't say, we upset everybody and their families and we destroyed, but he apologized to their families, their communities, and their country. And then he talked about the pain and the suffering and the hurt, another tricolon. To the stolen generations, their descendants, and the families left behind, another tricolon. The mothers, the fathers, the brothers and the sisters, and the breaking up of families and communities. Again, phenomenally powerful. And then the wrapping up by saying we really understand the indignity and the degradation inflicted on a proud people and a proud culture. We recognize your entitlement to your pride in who you are and the culture that we have. And he finally said, in each of the last three paragraphs, we say sorry, we say sorry, we say sorry. He didn't just say it once, he said it 3 times. An incredibly well-constructed apology with some sincerity in it, but made more powerful by the use of the rhetorical devices that I've talked about earlier. So think about, and that is the end of glib and oily number 4, but think about how can you construct your phrases using the ethos, pathos, and logos, recognizing them, the importance of them, using antithesis, using tricolons and anaphora and epistrophe, and metaphor and simile and analogy, so that you make yourself much more powerful, much more persuasive, and much more relatable to the audience. And I go back to the icebreaker when I talked about, when I used the phrases, and let me see if I can just grab them up here. I used the phrases in talking about the words that we use matter. I said that, but who did not know her, who had no picture of her, who she was, and what she meant to us. And I talked about in talking about my son, about a smallest group of family and close friends. But again, this is a pivotal moment in his life, in his wife's life, in his wife's family's life, and in my family's life, that matters greatly. So again, I'm trying to bring phrases in that can evoke a powerful sense of the emotion that I felt and the emotion that I hope you felt. And I hope that this has given you some value today. I'm looking forward to your evaluations and your feedback. Thank you for listening. Very much appreciated.
Thank you very much, Pat. It provided value to me, to our guests, and to the club. We are masters of evaluation, and we need to live up to our name. We are, of course, running late, so we are so sorry for that. I turn it over to our general evaluator, Victoria Trabosh. Bring us home, Vicky. Oh, unmute. There you go.
I'm there. Thanks very much, everyone. Pat, I hope you can stick around to hear these great evaluations. And we're going to start with Tamara, who will evaluate our first speech, the icebreaker.
I would compare this icebreaker with a prelude, with an overture to the opera of 4 acts titled Oratory Rhetoric. In the beginning, Pat mentioned a very important idea. The words we use matter. It resonated immediately with all of us Toastmasters and caught our attention. Then Pat shared some personal things as examples, and then brilliant ideas were thrown all around. For us, it was only necessary to catch, and put down, memorize. Teaching as a way of learning. Felt surrounded by warmth, love, support. Then Pat explained the origin of glib and oily, which was interesting and necessary. And then he prepared us in advance for what to anticipate, what we are going to hear. And then in the very end, conclusion was that all we are going to hear will help us influence the people better for worse, but help to influence better. And then I listened to the speech number 1, and I used one of the techniques Pat recommended, this balance, 5 words and 5 words. I just combined Pat's words in the beginning and Pat's words in the end. And this is how we can call the whole idea. What was this icebreaker about? The words we use matter for how to influence better. Thank you, Pat.
Thank you so much, Tamara. And now I'm going to go on to our second evaluator. For glib and oily speech number 1, Sandra Savage.
Thank you. 7 years of higher education in 7 minutes. I learned so much from Pat today. This is a complete quarter of higher education and what we received in an hour. What I specifically appreciated about this part of his tutorial is great beginnings. There were so many excellent examples of how we should start a speech without the thank you, the glad to be here, I'm going to talk about, but to say a statement that wakes us up, makes us think, and makes us smile and nod our heads like Gwendolyn is so famous for. I now understand ethos, pathos, and logos. And I love that flow actually in a speech. I felt like we had some great, valuable learning, and I'd like to suggest that we actually take each of his lessons as a meeting theme in the future. And I'm impressed, in conclusion, with what everybody has been writing in the chat. Those are our class notes, and they are priceless. So thank you, Pat. That was excellent.
Thank you, Sandra. And now, glib and oily number 2, Michael Schaefer.
Aha! I thought it was going to be like this. So let me go back to the notes that I've got in the chat. So what I loved in we're talking about the antithesis chunk, right? Yes. So the examples were my favorite in terms of the screen on the balance and opposition. There was so much clarity, like on that sort of simple little seesaw or teeter-totter or whatever, and to see the power of the symmetry of the order and the numeric symmetry as well on either side. And then when we got to the rule screens, it was just me kind of being a director in my mind. And I thought, wouldn't it be nice to have a little less, fewer screens and just build points as they came down? Instead of one screen that had all the 6 summary points, to just add one at a time and only do that, as opposed to have them separately. Because I kept seeing movement and I wasn't ingesting 6 things, which is a little bit of a challenge. So other than that, probably one of my favorite parts of the whole day. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. And now, glib and oily number 3, Victoria James.
I thought I was 4, Victoria.
You're evaluator number 4, but you're glib and oily number 3.
And that was, I hope that was metaphor, simile, and analogy.
Yes, I think it was.
Okay. Sorry about that. All right. Pat, you have an innate teaching ability. You have an innate sense of rhythm and timing, and your emotions really, in some way I can't articulate, jump off the screen or they're auditory. I'm not sure how it works, but you transmit your emotional state to me in a very powerful way. At the beginning of this speech, I think you had a little rough start. I think you mentioned that you were off camera. You needed to adjust something. And you said that, I think it would have been just perfectly fine to say nothing, to fix what was wrong, and then start your speech, to just pause. There was an there or two at the beginning while you were fixing things, and then I noticed, whereas I didn't in the previous speeches, there were a couple of that snuck their way into the talk. To challenge yourself in the future, I would like to see a little bit more intentional hand gestures. So I saw some good hand gestures, but I'm not 100% sure they were intentional. And vocal variety in the sense of volume would be helpful to me. I want to personalize this a little bit by answering your 3 questions. Did it inform me? Did it help me? Can I apply these tips? That's a yes, yes, and yes, and I'll tell you the reason why. I appreciated that you carried forward the previous lessons into this one. I just want to say that the material was dense, so maybe a little bit less of pulling forward the previous lessons and a little more emphasis on this is the metaphor, now I'm on simile, now I'm on analogy. For me, these devices, I've used them very intuitively over my life. I hear them and I say, oh, I repeat them. The way this helped me was that now I can name them. You've exemplified them for me, so I can look them up and study them more. And I'm inspired to do so because you persuaded me that you know what you're talking about. And I want your slide deck. I'll be requesting the slide deck just because the material was dense for me to listen to. And I need to study more on this subject, but you've persuaded me that you know what you're talking about. And so I will be requesting that. That being said, there were a lot of words on these slides. I appreciated the white space, but there were a lot of words. And for me, that my brain competes reading and listening. And as a listener, one of my things I struggle with is that when I read, I can't hear as well. So just a suggestion, I don't know how it works with this, but to a little less long quotes on the page and balancing out somehow how you're using this as a material to send to your audience later as like a textbook, because that works, but during the speech, it doesn't work as well for me. Thank you, Pat. I appreciate being able to give this evaluation.
Thank you, Victoria. And now, Mary Pryor, you have the final evaluation.
Thank you. Pat, I am just in awe of you. I thought your presentations were excellent. You had a way of conveying your message that we all understood with clarity and also with logic. I love the way you use visual aids supporting your points. And I will just summarize by saying impressive, important, details supporting each one of your speeches. And I certainly learned a great deal and understood now with clarity, pathos, and logos and ethos. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Mary. We learned so much, not only from our speaker today, but from our evaluator. You got a lot. I noticed you got a lot of chat messages, Pat. So what value, may I ask, since we're over, I'm going to keep going. What value did today bring for you, Pat Caslin?
Oh, a lot of value. Thank you very much to my evaluators. Very much appreciate your comments and your feedback and your suggestions for improvement, because I do think this can be improved. And you're absolutely right about what Michael said about the antithesis speech. I've done that one before a number of times. The other ones were new, and I've had time to refine that to get that absolute clarity by highlighting things as we went through. So I will refine the other speeches. I will improve them, and I will take on your point about the amount of white space and the number, the way I talk about this. So yeah, all of those points are well made, valuable for me, and good to take away, so that I can improve these and do them again and again, or something that is worthwhile having. But I'm glad people got value out of it. That's kind of the main thing. I'm glad I put a framework around it that people can now go and investigate, and look it up. And for that, I think this has been a worthwhile exercise, and I'm particularly delighted that Masters Evaluation will get to President's Distinguished. That was the purpose.
Thanks to you, Pat Caslin. And for all our evaluators, if you, quote, feel unworthy to evaluate a Pat Caslin, Pat took things from all of us. We are all evaluating all the time, and never doubt that you bring value. So thank you very much to our evaluators. Not a small task today. I'd like to turn this meeting over to our Toastmaster, but before I do that, Mr. Timer, wonderful job today. Could you please put all the timing in the chat for everyone to see? And back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Well, I'm a little concerned we're running late, so I don't have much to add, other than I'm very thankful to Pat, and it was very informative. As someone said earlier, I was familiar with some of these things, but I didn't know it by name. A nitpick, if I will, Pat, I don't know quite how to articulate this. We love your ideas and your thoughts, and they were all visually displayed. We don't see enough of you, and I'd like to have a little more power in your voice and your conviction. It's like you're this, I don't know, I just think it could become the life. I think there's almost a sort of aw shucks part about you. There's the power of your beliefs, but you're not taking some of the shine and being the messenger of that. And sometimes I think the PowerPoint kind of obscured, or you were in the shadows of it, if you will. You're always paying homage to the idea, and I'd like you to coexist, if you will, because you're the messenger of that. I thought it was a great meeting, and I can't wait for more of these. I love being President's Distinguished. It's nice to pump your chest out, but it's even nicer to know all the members who contributed to that, all the recent guests who became members, and people like Pat, who at times we haven't seen, just stepping up and doing this. It just speaks to the generosity. And when our Sergeant of Arms will take her award-winning 5-minute opening Sergeant of Arms message and truncate it for Pat Caslin, that's just service and greatness. So it was wonderful. I turn it over to our president. I must acknowledge that this is the last meeting of the year. Can we please unmute and congratulate and thank our board, but specifically Sandra Savage? You were a wonderful president, going to places I think were uncomfortable for you, all in the furtherance of the club. I'm aware of that. I'm saying that as a compliment. We all go to uncomfortable places. I know you were there. You did it for us, and I saw you, and I appreciate you, and I saw your growth as a leader. Thank you very much.
Thank you. In the last few minutes we have, I want to introduce another guest that joined mid-meeting. And I'm going to also ask our other two guests to briefly tell us what they gained the most from Pat's teachings today. But Jennifer, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Elovique. I am from London. I am a Toastmaster and past president of International Orators. I'll become president again next week. And I just thought, it would be great to just listen in. I saw the Masters of Evaluation on my email this morning, and I thought I'd give myself a birthday treat and dial in. So, really great. I loved it. And so it's already at 6:30 in the evening here, but I really enjoyed it.
Excellent.
So, thank you.
Thank you. And Naeem, please help me pronounce it.
It's pronounced Neve, as if it was Neeve.
Okay.
I know. It's not how it's spelled. It's an Irish name. It's
Well, what's one thing you took away from Pat's teachings today?
Well, as one of the evaluators said, these were things, like, I know it's good to have 3 of things, but to have the names for things like and I missed the very beginning, but I know one was pathos, logos, and what was the other word? I can't remember.
Ethos.
That's why I'm hoping to get a copy of the video. But yeah, to understand how they came about and what they're called, and what I would love to see now is something that sort of explains, I don't know, maybe Pat, you might do a workshop or something on how you would actually use those. Like, I'm intrigued, if people are using those in their speeches, do they start off going, well, how can I get a triad in here? Or does it come to them? Or, do you know what I mean? Like, but yeah, I thought it was very thought-provoking, extremely informative, as Pat's speeches always are, and delighted to be part of your meeting this evening. Thank you very much.
Thanks
Thanks for coming.
Thank you. And our other guest today, we have, I'm sorry again, I have a hard time pronouncing your name. I would like for all of us to give Pat a round of applause. This was phenomenal training, good insight. We've got a lot of notes to take away and use and apply towards our own speeches. And I'm so glad I got the ethos, pathos, and legos, because that is something that is really going to be helpful going for years and years to come. Yes, I just want to thank you all for a wonderful year. It's had its challenging points, but that's how you stretch and grow. And so I want to thank all of you for being a part of this club. It's my favorite club by far, because we get valuable evaluations. We get evaluations that are going to turn us into the voice of the future, the voice at work, within your community, however you choose to employ it. We're going to help each other get better. And the one thing I like about us is we're kind, but we're honest. And that's what's going to make us great speakers. And we have so many wonderful people in this group. If you're looking for a club that's really going to hone in on your skills and not give you the repetitive evaluation that we've seen a few times. And we continue to have themes that stretch us even further, to not stay in our comfort zones, but to grow, expand, and improve. So we welcome any of our guests to come back as again, or preferably as a member. And I want to also just thank everybody in this club for making us all President's Distinguished. Thank you.